Thank you for checking out our website. We hope you enjoy this week's message.
And Pastor, well, our theme is Here Am I, Send Me, and I was really excited about that because I'm sort of a Here Am I, Send Me product. Was 8th grade, North Minneapolis. I'm from Minnesota, as you'll probably hear people say, you're not from Texas. I said, does it sound like it? But I'm glad to be here, so I'm glad to live in Texas. For one thing, in northern Minnesota, they just got 18 inches of more snow last night. So that alone, and besides that, there's biscuits and gravy and sweet tea and fried okra, and Yankees don't know anything about that stuff. Anyways, I'm getting off. And so I was in 8th grade, and we had study halls. And I don't know if they still have study halls today. I don't know if you have any high schoolers here. Do they have study halls today? And I was doing what I always did in study hall. As soon as the teacher walked out the door, I was getting ready to launch my next projectile paperclip into the back of some book nerd's head in the front row. So I was getting ready to release that. I looked over, and there's Lenny Andolino. True Italian family. I mean, 8 kids, spaghetti and meatballs, and hey, what do you want to do? You know, that kind of, just a true Italian family. And I saw Lenny was reading something. And it was different than a book because it was leather bound and it really looked sort of cool. And I said, Lenny, what are you reading? He said, the Bible. What are you reading that for? What's that all about? This is what he said. 8th grade, something like this. After God has done so much for me in my life, I just want to get to know him better. 8th grader. I said, well, what's that all about? He spent the whole hour taking me through what we call the Romans Road, through the Romans, showing me who God was. If you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart God has raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. Why do I need to be saved? Talked about that, called me a sinner. I said, man, he's lucky because in the lunchroom, without a little background, I'd probably knock his teeth out over something like that in the day. But it all came together 2 months later. Lenny kept calling me. We became friends. And 1973, January, 2 in the morning, I got on my knees and I put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Amen. Then we had a missions conference, which is a little different than your missions month. But during a missions conference, a missionary from Africa spoke and my heart went, that's me. Here, my Lord, send me. That's all we'd ever done. Kathy and I had one date, and I was clear with all my dates at Bible college. God's called me to be a missionary. I usually get a response like this, oh, so there's one date, and that's it. Kathy said, cool. And we were engaged within 3 weeks. So that was 39 years ago. So 39 years ago, 3 sons and 15 grandchildren. So I'm a Here Am I, Send Me kind of product, and I want to sort of give you a different feel of missions. I think when we say missions and missionaries, we sort of get this exclusive, well, I'm not a missionary, I'm not called to missions. And in fact, as pastor, I don't know how it is with your church, but when I was pastoring, if we did anything with missionaries, I didn't want to tell anybody because I know the attendance would be down. I don't want to hear another missionary. It's the last thing I want to hear. Let me submit this to you. Everyone should develop a Here Am I, Send Me attitude because it's our greatest response to God, showing our worship, love, and gratitude. Let me give you some examples. You want to talk grandkids? I'll meet you afterwards, man. Right here. We're talking Facebook, man. I got the pictures. Someone asked me at the men's retreat, what's the biggest deer you ever shot in Minnesota? I said, forget North American deer. Let me show you a kudu I shot in South Africa. I was a hunter. Do you know that I didn't have any training in how to share that picture? Do you know that my grandchildren, I didn't have to go to theology. I didn't have to go to school. I didn't have to take any online courses. I just say, let me show you the greatest, most beautiful, most wonderful, bar none, nothing comes close to second place about my grandchildren. I'll go through and tell you every one of them, and you look at me like inside you'd be going, I'm bored to tears, man. I wish you'd shut up on that. So you go, oh, that's nice, that's nice, that's nice. It's what we all do with each other when we start showing grandchildren, right? Do you know, if you say, what's your wife like? Do you know that I'll share with you some things about Kathy? I don't have to have any training to do that. I just love her. I can talk about her all day long. Can I share with you, missions really is more about my attitude of the heart, my gratitude towards God than it is about a program of the church. Now we use programs, Because you have to have something in an organization to have some cohesion, to have some things together. But I want to challenge you with that today, with the worship, love, and gratitude. Now, you had a great worship today, and Kathy and I get around. We're in a lot of churches. We're raising our support. And we hear some worship times that are really pretty painful. Sort of like stomping a cat's tail, you know what I mean? This is like, time I get up to preach to them, everybody's still wincing in pain from what they've heard, you know? You had great music today. And what I shared with John is I told him I didn't, oh, he's back there. I don't want to give you a big head because I don't want a bigger church come and try to hire you away because you wouldn't forgive me for that. But it's very worshipful. I don't care if you do choir. I don't care if you do hymns. I don't care what kind of music you do. As long as it's worshipful and it feels like it's bringing me into the presence of God. You know, that's what missions is all about. Worship isn't just what I sing on Sunday morning. It's about who I talk about during the week. And let's take an example from the Bible here. There's a great example in the scripture of this. In the Old Testament, we had Isaiah, and God did some special things in his life. And then a question was asked to Isaiah in the verses on the bottom there of the hand. Who will go for us? And that's the same question asked to God's people today. Who will go for us? And Isaiah said, here am I, Lord, send me. There's an example in the New Testament. In Luke chapter 8, verses 38 through 39, there was a man that had all these demons in him. Nobody could help him. Nobody could do anything for him. He went and saw all kinds of people, high priests, I would imagine. He went to what we would have called the church in the day, the assembly. Probably saw the doctors, and his family was concerned. And when he came to Jesus, Jesus cast out all the demons. Totally changed his life. Question, how is your life today with Jesus Christ? Where's Jesus in your life today? And how is that lived out? Totally changed his life. I mean, he was a new creature in Christ Jesus, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. And so the man who had been freed from the demons begged Jesus to go with him. Well, that's the way to do it, right? Hey, I want you to meet Jesus. Then you can just sit down. Let Jesus talk, right? I want Jesus, come on, you need to go with me. You need to tell my family. You need to tell my brothers and sisters. You need to tell my community and my friends. You need to do for them what you did for me. When I came to Christ in 1973, put my faith in Christ, I brought my brother to church shortly after, and he put his faith in Christ. Then it was my sisters. Mom was a tough nut to crack. Our son Daniel led my mother to Christ 3 months before she died. Amen. Called up on the phone and said, Grandma Harry. Now, Mom and Dad divorced, and then Mom remarried Harry Linsholm, and the grandkids could never say Linsholm, so they called her Grandma Harry. That's what she'd known her whole life. So Grandma Harry said, look, time is coming, and Grandma said, yeah, I know. Mom said, I know. I just want to talk to you straight up about something. And he talked to the gospel with her, and led Mom to Christ. Praise God for that. But I wanted everybody to know, this is what Christ has done for me. Is it possible the reason we have such a hard time with missions, sharing the message and the love of Christ, is that there's something that hasn't connected in our life as far as Jesus is concerned? So what's Jesus' answer there? Jesus said to him, no, not going to do it. Same answer today. Don, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go to your family. I'm not going to go to your friends. I'm not going to go to your community. I'm not going to go to those people. You go do it. Go back to your family and you tell them everything God has done for you. Can I share with you? That's the essence of missions right there. I had to learn that. When I went to South Africa, I thought, here I am, man. White dude got off the plane. I've got 3 degrees and all this theology, and we went to the Zulu people under apartheid, and boy, I'm going to do it to them. And I learned pretty quickly, they don't care what your theology is, your education. They want to see something genuine in your life that they can connect with. That's the way people are. Show me something that's real and something I can connect with. Come out here and live with us and suffer with us and die with us. Help us bury our children that we're going to lose very high mortality rates. And then talk to me about Jesus. But don't give me the theology and the church stuff. That's what God is saying to us today. There are people in your sphere of influence that only you can reach. You know that? We're not going to talk to pastor. He gets paid to do that. Everybody knows he's on commission, right? For every convert he gets, man, it's a bonus, right? You laugh, but people think that aren't in the church. They got all kinds of thoughts about that. They're not going to come and talk to professional clergy, whatever you want to call us. Well, let's look here. So he went through all the town, notice this, proclaiming, hey, can I tell you what Jesus did for me? Can I tell you what he did in my life? Can I tell you what he's done for my family, what he's done for my wife? Can I tell you what he's doing for my children? And the great things Jesus had done for them. Question, what great things has Jesus done for you? You said nothing. He's done nothing for me. Are you a child of God? Amen. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. He sat on that cross, hung in there and said, it is finished. Well, he did a lot for me already. I want to introduce you this morning to So Here Am I, Send Me people. Okay? Talked about us a little bit. We'll talk about us a little bit more. But some people that to me have sort of exemplified what we're talking about today. And let me say this. So I'm sharing our story and our ministry as I've been asked to do, but this is my Here Am I, Send Me story. Everybody has their own unique Here Am I, Send Me story if you're going to respond in worship and gratitude and love to God. Let's look at a couple things. Well, I don't know if you recognize the two young people in there, the two young adult Anglos, but that's Kathy and I. How long ago was that, sweetie? Lord have mercy, that's 31 years ago. When I was a young man and a thin man. Yes. Yep. Tried to get thin like that again. It's just too hard when you're older, so. I'm 60. What do I care? She loves me. I've got it taken, so I'm not going to lose any more weight. And then my three sons, I remember that picture, Donnie, Danny, and Denny, because they said, we're going to sit here and look cool and tough. And that was what they were trying to do in the picture. So we went to South Africa because we said, I remember in the missions conference up in Minnesota I was at, that was the theme, Here am I, Lord, send me. I'll go, Lord. I'll go. Let's go. Let's do it. Well, I have an adventuresome spirit. That's my personality. And God uses people, God uses us in our personality and our characteristics to accomplish His task. I'll go. That'd be. You don't have to drag me off screaming. That's exciting. Let's do it. And we were able to serve all those years because there were churches and people like you that you believe in that enough that you actually put money in the plate to support missionaries. Most countries, as Americans, we cannot go over there and work in their markets, in their workplace, because most countries won't let you take a job from a national worker. So we got to show up with a skill set that they want, or we got to show up with the cash. And every month, churches would send us money so we could take care of our babies. We could get what we needed. We didn't live lavishly, but we lived well in South Africa. It's one of the only African countries you can really live well, but there's a trade-off on that, as Jim would know. So, folks in Tanzania. And we had churches support us, just like some of you are doing today. Do you know, part of Here Am I, Send Me, Lord, is what you'll contribute, or as we would say in South Africa, contribute, right? To help get other people there. Missionaries are really struggling. It takes them 3, 4, one couple, 5 years it's taken them to raise their money. That's how difficult it is today. So we are in South Africa, and here's what God's people help us do. This is a team effort, folks. Can I say God is sort of like the pyramid scheme? I better not say it that way, right? No. But this is all of us together, holding the rope. These are just some of the churches we started and some of the works we started. And the bottom right work is our last work we built, and it's very much more developed now. There's trees around it and gardens in there and more buildings. And we now today in South Africa, they employ 75 ministry personnel. 40 of them are medical people. And the $20,000 a month it takes to run that's all done by South Africans, staffed by South Africans, and paid for by South Africans. They do the whole thing. They're taking care of the churches in the front half, and then the ministry centers in the back. They're taking care of upward of 20,000 orphan kids out in the locations and stuff that parents have just been wiped out from AIDS. Churches, that's what you help accomplish around the world. That's what we're doing together as a team. Okay, there you go. Let me introduce you to another fellow, Simon Dube. Now, you've already seen him. You don't recognize him. This is when we first got to South Africa. He was a really old guy. I was 28, and he was 68. So, this guy was decrepitly old, right? At 68, doesn't look so old anymore, right? Doesn't. But this was him in his last few years of life, and Simon was the guy that taught me Zulu. A friend introduced him, and he said, I hear the white man, you'd like to learn Zulu. And I said, yes, I would. So lessons began. So Simon taught me the clicks and everything, all the, ka, ke, ki, ko, ku, ka, ke, ki, ko, ku, ka, ke, ki, ko, ku, za, ze, zi, zo, zu, sa, se, si, so, zu, and ka, ke, ki, ko, ku. Now, you mix a ka up with a, and you got a real problem. I'll just tell you that right now. And I've made some of them. And sometime when it's just the men together, I'll tell you some of the really bad ones, but I won't talk about them now. And so Simon and I started working together, and in the Zulu community, people started making fun of us. What are you doing with that old guy? What are you doing with that old man? Why don't you get some young guys around you? And I wish we had them, but we didn't. But God brought me the exact, here am I, send me person. What do you think is respected above all things in the Zulu culture? Anyone take a stab at it? Age. Now, it was very dangerous. I didn't have any problem when Simon was with me. And we started going out and visiting. He started hearing me preach, and I was doing my thing. I was excited. Then Simon came up and said to me, and this is the exact words he used. He had heard it from a guy named Joseph Bengu through Assembly of God's Back to God Ministries. He came up. We were sitting in our home, part-tied, when I had to have a license to even be able to go out in black areas, and after dark, blacks couldn't come to my home. It was apartheid. You got to read the history. But he's in my home, and he's having tea right at our table. It was never done. And we're talking. He looked at me and said, will you teach me how to be a fisher of men? Now, Simon had no teeth in the front of his mouth. It said, fisher of men. Teach me to be a fisher of men. Now, folks, exact wording. I thought, wow, that just grabbed me. Who talks like that? I mean, that's sort of churchy talk, isn't it? I said, sure. Well, I was still learning Zulu. It wasn't until I'd been in there 5 or 6 years before I could preach on my own and write my own message and stuff. But I took Simon out, and I would witness and share Christ with people, and he probably translated that 1,000 times. You get to be pretty good at something if you translate it 1,000 times. And this is where God really hit it home with me. Simon was a fellow that said, man, here I am, Lord, send me. I want to share. And he talked about how good God was. I mean, here's a guy that they lived in a little block shanty house with asbestos sheeting roof tiles on. God is so good. God is so good. Little 600 square foot place with 9 people in there. And he'd want to share that. And here we went to one of many meetings. But this was a meeting in Ezekeni where he lived. And at this meeting was the son of the Zulu king, Goodwill Sifiso Zwelatini. And Simon was sitting with me, and we were somewhere out yonder, I don't know, way in the back. And all of a sudden I look, and Simon's gone. Okay. Hey, how you doing? I'm there all by myself. Hardly know anybody. But they were very kind. The Zulus were very kind to us, very gracious to us. And I looked and saw Simon. What is that old man doing? He's actually making his way up to the platform and starting to walk the stairs. You have to understand, this is the royal family. Zulus number 10 million people. Nobody's just going to walk up to the king and say, hey, man, give me, how about knuckle bumps? There's bodyguards around him. They're there for a reason. But Simon had this way, and this will drive your camera guys nuts, but hey, I'm sorry. So Simon had a way of going up and saying, this was his way. He would and he walked very slowly and sort of gated over. Just like this. And do you know what that old man did? He got up at the podium, and for 45 minutes he said, we have a great king, King Goodwill Zwelatini, talked about him. And of course the Zulus are doing their chants and Yebo and all kinds of things. And his son. And then he said, but I want to tell you about a greater king than even that. Do you know that old man in front of all those dignitaries? This is what Jesus has done for my life. He's king of my life. For 45 minutes. Amen. Do you know he gave an invitation? Bow your heads. Right now you can, in your heart. How many of you done that? Hands went up. Well, there you go. What do you think the chances would have been that I'd ever got that opportunity? Or I'd have been effective at it anyways? See, there are some places that only you can minister and you can only reach. Here, my Lord, send me. And Simon was so grateful. Simon taught me what true worship was. It's really an attitude of gratitude of the heart. Let me tell you about what God's done for me. tell you how he put us back together. One of the reasons we came back from South Africa that I share is I was a mess. I was a wreck, and it got worse when I came back to the States. And I had to start seeing a Christian therapist and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome. And 80 hours of therapy helped me learn how to manage this thing that I work with every day. I have to manage it every day. Kathy and I manage it every day. Do you know Simon was a World War II vet. He was a POW. How many military do we have here? You've served in the military or serving? Thank you for your service. Simon was on the ambulance stretchers bearers corps, and he was captured 1940. 39, up in the North African front whenever Rommel was there. And he spent 5 years in POW camp. So he's totally fluent in Italian and German as well. 8th grade education. But Simon had so much gratitude and so much worship, and it taught me to take my eyes off the stuff that I accumulate and keep my eyes on the person who's made the change in my life. We came back to the States. This is up here in Minnesota, way up there in Minnesota. Yeah, don't you know we're the people? Everything is super. We have the Lutefisk and the Norwegians. Yeah, don't you know? You betcha. I told Kathy, I never talked like that. And she said, oh, yes, you did. Church we pastored. And the church really, we had a number of Mennonites in there, great people. And we borrowed the money for the land and the materials, and they built their house free of charge. 40 minutes from the lake where my grandfather taught me to fish. And I said, Lord, not here am I, send me. Lord, here am I, I've done my time. I'm going to just work and pastor this church. When I figured out at 75 or so, I'd have the house paid off. What a goal, right? At 75. There you go. Living the American dream. In a house, on a piece of property, and I got to pay for it every month. The bank owns it, I don't, so... But this is our story. I'm not saying it needs to be your story. I'm not trying to move you in that direction. This is our story. Something radically changed our lives while I was pastoring. This group of people, they're all missionaries down in Honduras, and they're with a group called the Missionary Retreat Group or something, Honduras Missionary Retreat. And every year in September, they do a retreat, and one of the men in there was out of our church. He's born and raised out of church. He's a missionary. He's an MK. In fact, his father pastored the church for 30 years before I came. Would you come down and speak in our retreat? We'd like you to be the main speaker. Okay. So Kathy and I went. It was the first time I shared my story. It was very difficult. It was very painful. The missionaries saw that. They realized that, but what we realized when we were there is we connected with them. And missionaries came up and would share, my daughter's cutting. What do I do? A missionary couple came up and, you know what, we can't hardly stand each other anymore. What do we do? Okay, how long have you been on the field? About a year. What are you doing? We're studying the language, okay. Who's the only person that can speak English? He can, she can. Who do you think you're going to fight with then? There's only 2 of you in the whole town that can speak English. Who do you think you're going to fight with? Well, that's natural, right? It's not like you're going to get in the car and go shopping, go see a Rangers game. At least you got the Cowboys to go to up here. I had to see the Vikings lose 4 Super Bowls, so, you know. I was so glad when the Patriots lost. I shouldn't say this because now they've lost 5 Super Bowls. Did you know that? When the Vikings have only lost 4, so that really helped me. We came back to Minnesota after spending time with these folks, and they poured out our hearts to Kathy and I, and we spent all day during the day just meeting with them and consoling them and encouraging them. We realized several things about missionaries. We were having missionaries call us at our church, and it got to where I was pastoring missionaries more than I was pastoring my church. And leadership saw that, and they realized that a shift was going to happen in my heart, our hearts. But missionary expectations, missionary expectations are dashed in a second. You get to the field, it's going to be like this, it should be like that, it doesn't work out. Missionary loneliness is a real thing. Most of your missionaries are very lonely. Go out to the jungles of the Amazon, and how are you going to connect? There's not a Starbucks out there, and if there was, there's not anyone you can talk to anyways. Not in your culture. Of finances, most missionaries, not all, but most are living way below what we live here in the States. And if they've got $3,000 a month support, $1,000 of that pays for their insurance. Missionaries have to pay for their own insurance. So they don't have the benefits, and they try to do all that. Then there's personal issues. Missionaries' kids are like your kids. So whatever your kids have gone through, their kids struggle with some of the same things. There's marital issues. There's personnel issues. There's conflict. There's problems with the American missionary and the national people, those things. They're in-between cultured people. Now, if they're a missionary kid that grew up on the field and was born there, then they're a third culture person. But Kathy and I are not third culture. We're in between. I don't really think like you folks do the way you think because I was out of here so long, but I don't think like a South African does either. So we always have that dilemma. Missionaries are in there. Aging parents, what do? You're on the field, you've been there 20 years and your parents are old. We came back and took care of my mom and Harry, and they both died within 3 weeks of each other. So, or empty nesting. How hard is that? You say, I had to send my little baby to Louisiana to university. We put our kids on the plane, took them over one at a time, and put them in school in Florida, and then Kathy and I were sitting there looking at each other in South Africa all by ourselves. And those are just some of the problems I go through. So God began to talk to our hearts about, hey, I want you to do a new ministry. Someone who's a missionary needs to come alongside the missionaries and help them. Encourage them with some skills and a story. And I had a hard time with this because Kathy was way ahead of me on the faith curve. Way ahead. When we came back from Honduras, we sat and looked at our house. And I looked at her and I said, we're going to have to give this up. And she said, yep. Usually it's the other way around, folks. It's the woman. But here it's the man. I don't want to lose my house. I got a 3-car garage. Heated. And I'm building a pole barn. Bigger than my house. I don't have anything to put in it yet, but I'm going to get plenty of junk and fill it. Because that's what we do in northern Minnesota. God really challenged me out of Hebrews 11:6. He rewards those who diligently seek him. Don, are you willing to allow me to reward you? And I'm asking you again. I said, Lord, at my age, to step out again. So we sold our house. Started by faith. We met your pastor. He said, what are you doing living? I said, we're just living wherever we can. We stay in this missionary apartment. I said, we got a house you can stay here. All last year, Kathy and I were in the house coming and going, raising support. Thank you for that. That's a Here Am I, Send Me church. They're hard to find decent places to stay. And it's a long story, but now we got a permanent place more down on the lake in Lake Granbury that someone's bought a house and remodeling it for us to stay in and do our ministry too, and that's another story. But our purpose is helping missionaries serve longer and stronger in their callings in ministry. We want them to be healthy. We want them to know, have we been in the trench? We'll hear you, we'll listen to you. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to cry. It's okay to experience failure. We all do. But let's see Christ in that. We do the 5 C's, we call them. This is what we offer our missionaries, camaraderie. We've been there. Just like the soldiers, military. Soldiers, military only, they measure up other people that have been in the military before you talk about certain things. Same with police officers, same with firefighters, same with school teachers. Only school teachers can understand some of the things school teachers go through and so forth and so on. Confidentiality. I say everything you say stays here with us. We're a safe place unless you're talking about killing yourself or each other. Then we got to widen that up. Because I'm a mandated reporter. Coaching. Kathy and I are both professional life coaches. We've been thoroughly trained in that. It's a great skill set to work with missionaries, life coaching. So we're not therapists. We do some counseling, but primarily we do coaching, help those missionaries move forward. We offer them compassion. You can come and cry on our shoulder. You can dump it all on me. A burden shared often is a burden carried. You can dump it all on us. Just dump it all right here. The whole mess. Back the dump truck up full of life's manure and just dump it on us. Because they can't do that here on a Sunday morning, right? They don't come and say, hey, keep supporting us. Life is good. By the way, my wife and I, we haven't talked to each other for a week. Can't do that. Or my child's doing this, we've got that, or I've got problems, or I'm struggling here, I'm struggling there. But you can do that with us. And then there's Christ's cross. We want to see, look, folks, let me ask you a question. In the Christian's life, is there anything that happens in your life that's an accident to God? No? So you know what that means? There's purpose in everything that happens in our lives. And so instead of asking, why God, why God, why God, why God, why God, why God, I know I'm the only one that does that. Why God, why God? I've learned to ask this, God, what are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? How do you want me to respond? And we try to help missionaries walk that path as well. This is now a different group in Honduras that asked me. I've never met the people here, and the fellow that leads it called and said, emailed me and said, would you come down to Honduras? And we're the Honduran Fellowship of Fellowship and Ministries. Would you come and do our camp this year? Kathy and I were just there 2 weeks ago. So we're at the camp. It's registration. We're watching people come in, and I said to John, the guy that's running, I said, how many missionaries are coming to this thing? He said 350 adults and 115 children. Now, God's enlarging our borders. We go to Haiti next month. And then I got an email from the leader of the El Salvador, I didn't tell you this, Pastor, from the El Salvador Ministry of Missionaries, Fellowship of Missionaries and Ministries, said, will you come and do our retreat in November? So God, that's what God's doing, folks. Here am I, Lord, send me. God's rewarding us because we've diligently sought him. By the way, your partner's in with us because I don't know if you know that you support us, right? You're one of the first churches, your pastor, you're one of the first churches to take us on. It's hard to get churches to support what we do because it's new, it's different, and anyways, so your partner's with us in that. So here's what I challenge you with this morning. The question is, here am I, do what? Do what? In your heart, is it here am I, I'm interested in my pursuits, my wants, my desires, my addictions, my whatever. It's me, mine, I, God, and I want to sort of paste you on the end of that. So here's what I'm going to do, God. Then I'm going to praise you. Then I'm going to take and put you over the top and say, God, make everything good. Or are you willing to say, here am I, and then concentrate on your worship, your love, your gratitude, your service, and send me where? I'm not saying everybody goes to the mission field today. It's not what I'm saying, because we're surrounded by the mission field. In fact, the mission field lives among us today. The peoples of the world all live here. We have a place and sphere of influence. And here's my challenge for you to think about. Now, it's a question I want you to take home with you. It's not a yes or no answer. Here am I, Lord, me. What? What's your response to that? Say, I don't know. Good. Pray about it. Think about it. Here am I, Lord, me. Here am I, Lord, help me coach for you. Here am I, Lord, help me be a teacher for you. Here am I, Lord, help me be an entrepreneur for you, but whatever. Here am I, Lord, me.